Welcome to the GATE Show. I'm Roseanne Katowski, co-founder along with Scott Allman of GATE. GATE is Groton Advocates for Tax Efficiency. We are a bipartisan political action committee. Our overall mission is to advocate for the alternative perspective to tax and spend and for transparency in Groton town government. We believe that GATE reflects the values and principles of the residents of Groton as we support the education for our children and the town operations that we can afford, as well as a Board of Education and town government that is transparent in all actions. Today we welcome to our show RTM members Bruce McDermott, Karen Morton, Bill Smith, and Rick Pascalini. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's good to be here.
Okay, I'll start with the first question. The 2015 budget process is complete and spending is increasing $2.8 million. But for the majority of the accounts, there was no amended figures put on the floor and very little discussion. What happened? Karen, can I start with you?
Sure. I think very early on in the process, it became very clear that there was not going to be any collective will among the members of the RTM to do anything about cutting the budget. I had heard from a number of people that they were actually upset at the few cuts that had been made by the town council. And I was told that those cuts would never stand, that the RTM would make sure that the money was restored. And I think at some point you just have to start picking your battles. And I fought for those line items that came up where I thought that cutting should be done, and I supported alternate amounts that were put on the floor. But for the rest of them, at some point you just have to cut your losses and say, we need to fight this fight again next year.
That's very discouraging. Bill, what do you think?
I guess my perspective is that because people knew that we had this found money, that people recognized that there was going to be no tax increase, even though spending increased, the $2.8 million. So that has sort of set the tone regarding, we don't really need to really tighten down the screws this year. We can wait a year. I think what's important is you really you cannot lose focus as to keeping your spending under control. Every penny is precious, especially now. So there are risks going into fiscal year 2016. So what we do now sets a stage for future increases or decreases. So I'm new into the RTM, trying to understand the process. What was interesting as well, that you grant the permission of the various committees to do the rigorous analysis of the spending. So whether it's public works, whether it's finance, whatever it may be, that's when the hard analysis should take place. I still contend that the RTM is not an ideal forum to really have the drawn out budget battles, because you don't have time to look at what is the true data. And there's an old saying back when I was in the business world, which is, if you interrogate the numbers long enough, they'll eventually confess. There was no interrogation done to the level that should have happened.
Rick, what about you?
It's dysfunctional. The whole process is dysfunctional. I mean, you have 41 people in a room talking about a $122 million budget, that you have people that don't own a business, don't know anything about finances, probably don't even do their own checkbook. How are they going to make these decisions on what needs to be cut or where cuts could be made? I don't ever advocate cutting the budget with an axe. It's looking through on where cuts can be made in the respective departments. And those meetings, there's just too many. I mean, we have a group of people and they're all volunteering, they're all willing to help, they're all public servants, they're all elected. But what level of interest or what level of education or whatever of understanding of how our government works do they have?
Interesting. Bruce, what's your opinion?
Well, I'm pretty much concerned with the top cost centers, education, public safety, public works. I'm on two of those committees. and Rick is chairman of the Public Safety Committee. But I discussed this a little bit with the superintendent, a new guy, and certainly want to support him, but our test scores in the town are pretty poor. Well, I should say poor, they're average. They're no better than the state average. And it cost us, in 2001, cost us $9,800 to educate a student. Now it's $17,000, essentially. The test scores, which is the only measure we have really to look at to see how efficient we are doing what we're doing, are very average. They're no different than the rest of the state. I'd like to see some real improvements, or at least a blueprint about how we're going to go forward to do something about that. And I don't think I heard anything about that, although I certainly want to support the superintendent as a new guy. And so I voted to actually go along with their budget increase. But the other real problem is we do have a blueprint for our public safety. And I was kind of a little bit concerned that apparently there are very few people in the room that night that were either not aware of it or didn't understand it, or when I referenced it, nobody seemed to make any comments of any kind.
Yeah.
Which was really disconcerting, I thought. And it shows us how we can save a lot of money. In my opinion, you add the money that we give the city, for instance, together with the amount of money that we spend in the town, even though I understand it's a separate legal deal with the city. And you have the second biggest cost center by far after the education
Next to the
department.
Board of Ed.
So we do have a blueprint for the public safety, how to proceed. I questioned the manager at some length about proceeding with this. He said he was going to look at it and do something about it. Now, whether that'll happen or not, we'll just have to see.
Thank you. You all mentioned committees. What about the RTM committees? Do you really think that the hard work is done in the committees? Are people at the committees prepared? Do they have their data? Do they ask the questions? I mean, how is that working out? Rick?
No, I don't think, I mean, Finance Committee meets with, I don't know how many departments, 10 or 11
Yeah, it's a big one.
different budgets they're going through. I mean, my committee, the public safety, we have that and the 2 ambulance groups. So we do have time, but except for a couple of people that have done some homework or know about law enforcement can ask the questions or try to pry the answers out, the rest are spectators. So it's not really, I mean, again, they all mean well, they're put on the committee, but you need to do your homework, you need to find something out. Talk to people, talk to the officers, talk to some
Do
in the
research.
administration, anything,
Yeah.
and get some information. I mean, the boots on the ground, they're gonna tell you what's going on the inside of whether it's Public Works, whether it's the police department or whatever. It always seems like those people on the bottom know what's up.
Within the Finance Committee, I mean, I will give lots of credit to people like John Scott, who did their homework, had a level of knowledge in terms of what the budget entailed. I thought it was a reasonably good conversation. We had the City of Groton mayor in attendance. We had the police chief of the Groton Long Point. So we were able to have a good dialogue regarding what is reasonable, what's appropriate. So I felt good about the Finance Committee. Were we as rigorous and as focused on a cost cut going in? Probably not. Again, one of the things I look at, the town council setting policy for the town, addressing the key issues for the town, for all the citizens of the town. And I'm not sure we're there yet from a town council policy development perspective.
That's true. Very true. There was some misinformation presented this year during the budget process regarding the Spicer House, health insurance premiums, number of positions in planning, and there was also inaccurate information in the town manager budget letter regarding town council direction on the budget. Does anybody want to say anything about any of those?
Well, I asked about the health insurance premiums, and I had understood they were more for union people than they were for non-union people, which is a whole other topic. But I think I was told it was 12% for non-union people, is that correct?
It's 10.
It's 10?
It's 10 for non-union, and it's 14.5 to 16 for union, with the police being the highest at 16.
So it's 50% more essentially. Yeah. They said that that was going to be addressed sometime before our next go-round. Whether that'll happen, I'm not sure, but hopefully I take the town manager at his word.
Now, Karen, you're in human resources. You must have an opinion
Well,
about this.
yeah, and I think the issue is that how does the RTM membership know whether or not the information they're getting is
Exactly,
accurate?
Exactly.
I think it's kind of imperative that the body be able to trust 100% in the accuracy of information that they get by the town manager, town officials, department heads, and everything else. And I think I'm very concerned when I hear that people made votes based on information they were given that
Absolutely.
turns out to be incorrect. I'll give you an example too. At one of the meetings, the Spicer House came up for a vote, and there was a lot of discussion about that, and we were all told that the deed from the Spicer, for the Spicer property, mandates that the town is obligated by restrictions in the deed to maintain the house and everything. That's why there was all this money in the budget for the painting and everything. I was concerned when they admitted that they had never looked into siding the property. That it just seems to me that would have been done as a matter of course. However, there were people who at the next meeting indicated that they had actually gone to the town hall and pulled the deed and found out the information that we were given at that meeting was incorrect. There is no requirement
Right.
in
And
the deed.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up a little bit on that, when you were a town council member, was there information during the budget season that was differently presented to the RTM versus the town council?
Yes, that happened routinely.
Right.
In fact, that was the driving force behind the councils. When I was on the council, the councils moved to let's get the RTM and the council together for budget sessions,
Right.
because we discovered that departments, outside agencies, subdivisions were going to the council first, finding out what the council's concerns were, and then changing their presentation or the way they crunched their numbers
Right.
when they gave it to the RTM so that it had a better chance of flying.
Bill?
A town budget of $122 million, it's relatively sizable, a lot of moving parts and pieces. I will grant our town manager good intentions. I will
course.
grant that, I didn't know, a statement was made. I went back to Mark Ofinger the next meeting, and I asked him about the Spicer situation. He confessed that he had made a mistake.
Oh, well, everyone makes a mistake.
So he's a great find.
Yeah.
I guess the important thing from my perspective is you need a true and accurate data set to make good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't know, then confess, don't know, I'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having the data that's available to allow the committees, allow the RTM, allow the council to really do the staff work, if you will, to make sure that there's the pros and cons of any decision, that's what's required.
Rick, any comments on this?
It's unique. You can hear the same thing. It's not a real functional government
Right.
moving along because there's too many different parts. I mean, I'm guessing or surmising that the original setup was when you had a strong council who the town manager works for, and the council is making these decisions,
Right.
that the representatives are the people wanting to go and restore cuts made by the council. It's now gone the other way around.
Very interesting perspective.
That the town manager won't make a cut. He wants everything to remain the same, hoping the economy changes. then it goes to the council. Well, those members don't know the day-to-day operation, so they don't know where they can cut certain things. So if they do a cut, I'm sure the town manager will do exactly like a superintendent. I'm gonna cut, so the people are gonna know these cuts. It's not upper management, it's not any of those cuts. It's gonna be boots on the ground, it's gonna be programs people want. And then to me, it would seem like then it was set up to come back to the representatives, to the people. So if there was a big cut in Board of Education
Right.
by there, then the groundswell from us getting all the information, making the decision of to restore certain things. But it's come down to us that we're the last, we're where the buck stops. How do you get 41 people to do that? I mean,
It's turned into a rubber stamp.
I think
so
the
to
sign
speak.
on the president's desk was the buck stops here,
Yes.
not in a room of 41 people.
Right, that's right. If everybody's responsible, then no one's accountable? Wasn't it
Correct.
that you that
Nobody,
said that?
nobody's in charge.
That's right, that's
No,
right. Okay, in the budget, there seems to be $490,000 approved for non-specific items, $200,000 in the legislative policy for various items, $40,000 in planning and development for non-specific economic development functions, and $250,000 in a CIP for economic assistance with no spending plan associated with it. Should there be more accountability to the taxpayers as to what $500,000 will be spent on? Bruce?
No, obviously. But I'd like to go back a minute to the committees that we're talking about.
Okay.
I think they're largely a waste of time. And I think the proof of that is hardly anything changes.
That's right.
And it's been going on since I've been on the RTM like that. So I'd certainly like to see that change. Now, Heather Bond suggested, and I was part of that, to make this an effort that both the RTM and the council's committees got together and just did this once. And I think that's just an obvious way to go. I know there's some reluctance to do
There's
that
a
by
lot of
some of the
resistance.
folks, because they want things to remain the same.
That's right.
But why have things remain the same if nothing ever changes?
Good point.
And as far as the expenditures are concerned, you know, we get the explanations of them and they sound pretty good, and of course there should be some accountability, and we don't really revisit a lot of these things, however.
So they
You
end
know,
up being,
it gets put out there, and then we don't really get any follow-up information
right.
about what's going on, whether they're being spent, whether they're being channeled in a certain area. So I would go along with that kind of thing with the proviso that we do find out what's happening and get some sort of a report card now and then.
well, it seems like they're ending up 3 big slush funds.
Yep.
Exactly.
If I can, so for example, the $200,000 for legislative policy.
Right.
In terms of key issues for the town, the number one issue is how do you accelerate economic development? And so we bellyache about unemployment being 8% or so, and that's unacceptably high. We now have the resources to do things. And Bruce, I agree with you that we need, what's your plan? Come back to us, to the RTM. Here's how we deploy those precious resources, $200,000. What are you gonna do? We'll have to approve every $10,000 item anyways, but we need that from the council. The $40,000 to economic development, which is Kristen Clark's organization department, to do some of the outreach marketing. We still need a plan more detailed.
Right.
The other $250,000 for the Economic Assistance Fund, that's to do things, if there is a large company come in, to help them with curb cuts, sewer connections, et cetera. That money is not spent until we get a request for that. There is an Economic Development Commission within this town that is trying to do the right things, but it's been hard to move that forward. There's a meeting tomorrow, and we're going to talk, Bruce, about how do we deploy these resources, what is the action plan, get everybody to say, yeah, that makes good sense, because I'm disappointed with the lack of progress from the Economic Development Commission, which I used to be a member of. And so we're trying to sort of move that forward. It's hard, but just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be done.
Sure.
So hold everyone's feet to the fire. What is your plan? When are you gonna tell me what you're gonna do? come back to me and report back, what you did, and oh, by the way, was it successful or not
Right.
over the next 3 or
And
4
what
months.
is the measurement?
Absolutely.
That's
And it has to be, job creation, business retention, and that's what we need.
Right. Karen?
I totally agree with Bill. I think that there was very detailed descriptions given to the RTM members on every one of these particular appropriations, but it's just going to mean that we're going to have to be very critical when we get the feedback from them and they come before us. But again, there doesn't seem to be any collective will to do anything differently. So I guess the cynic in me thinks that these will, like everything else, everything will be just rubber stamped, and it'll be.
In the minutes, the reason why I said that there was no specific details, in the minutes, it's very vague on what you actually voted on. Okay. Rick?
Well, cynical, I think some of it's, we've seen how the town has run some projects.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be Board of Ed or the town side. So that scares me, giving them money to run anything. And I mean, you can list them, both sides have had a project and failed. It's an F. And we voted, I think it was a couple years ago, to spend money because the insurance company was going to bring in these trucks to flood this high school with water to try to find where the leaks are. I think it was a $173,000 appropriation, which we said they were all working with. We never heard anything back. To me, we just dumped $173,000 out the window. Well, in through the windows, I guess.
Through the roof.
And nobody's held accountable. So you're right, but it would, not that we would say, gee, that's a bad plan, because we don't know. They are supposed to be, we are paying them to be the coordinator, to know what type of project can be done and what would the returns be, is what I want to know. If you're going to spend $500,000, what are the prospective returns on that? I mean, can they give it outright and say, this is potentially what we can do? It's like, if I had $1 million, I can probably over time bring in 10. That's good, I'll go with that. Not, give me the money and we're gonna work on something.
Right.
I mean, I know we get to approve in $10,000 allotments, or anything over $10,000 we're approving, but I don't understand why you don't have a plan or an idea before you're asked for money. It's the taxpayers' money you're taking out of the pocket and holding on to.
Right.
Not that we're against it, it's tell me what it's for.
And follow up.
The same with every CIP I ask, is this shovel ready? Are you ready to go the minute we say yes, the budget's approved, you go, everything's sent out? Oh yeah, yep. There's still projects that weren't done
Yeah.
that we approved last year, which means we could have held money till the next year when you're ready.
Right.
It's not
That's a
that we're
good point.
against it.
That's
We're
a very
just,
good point.
why am I gonna take $500,000 from taxpayers now? I'll do it next year, we got it coming up.
Interesting. It seems that the town manager and Board of Education direct the budget process. A specific example is 2% salary increases were built into the budget for all non-union employees that the town manager and the Board of Education include in the budget every year without town council input. How can this be prevented? Who wants to start? I know this was a hot topic this year.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So whether it's the Board of Education budget or the town budget, it is driven by the personnel expenses, salary, wages, benefits, et cetera. And as you set a salary, that's going to be a driver to your benefits, both your pension benefits as well as your health care costs. So you have to rein that in. In terms of what is fair, what's adequate, what's reasonable, I think there are a number of positions that are $100,000 plus jobs in the town of Groton. Those are well-compensated positions.
Very well compensated.
One of the things that the Finance Committee is trying to do starting the next meeting, which is June the 11th, is aggregate a group of people to look at the compensation of the town employees, starting with non-union employees, see what that looks like, benchmark it relative to other public functions or public organizations, town of Stonington, Waterford, and then do a similar analysis to the public jobs. So if this is the job that you're doing, what are some of the benchmarks and how do we compare? Now, in terms of a 2% salary increase, I think it's higher than it should be. Inflation is 1.5%. I could stomach a 1.5% rate of increase. I have a hard time dealing with 2%. I have a hard time dealing with that much money to town employees serving a population with 39% of the households make less than $50,000 a year.
That's right.
That is a huge, and so you got to think about what is the average income in the town, which is roughly $61,000 per household, relative to these well-paying jobs, and just to make sure that things are balanced. I think the town folks work hard. I think they're smart, but is it a fair and equitable salary relative to other public and private organizations?
Thank you. This part of that, though, Karen, and since you were on the council, the budget with the raises included comes to the town council. The town council doesn't say, okay, Board of Ed, please give X amount. Okay, town manager, please give X amount. I think that's part of the problem, that the process is reverse of what it's supposed to be. Is that how you felt when you were on the council?
Absolutely. There was never, it wasn't a case of the council saying to the town manager, we want you to negotiate no more than 1% increases for your non-unions or for the union members or anything. It was always that you have an HR department in the town, and they basically negotiate the contracts and the non-union raises, and then come back to the council and say, this is what we've negotiated. And the council either approves or doesn't approve it, and then virtually always it's approved. I think as someone who's in HR and has done labor contracts and everything, I understand the concept of wanting to appropriate money in a budget for the possibility of giving raises. And towns, I think, typically do that as part of their budget process, because you have some idea of where you think wage increases are going to fall, and either you set this money aside in the budget, or you've got to come back at some point and take it out of contingency. So which is the more prudent way to budget, I don't know. My biggest heartburn is I think Groton's wages are very generous. I know that they're among the highest of comparable towns anywhere in this area, and therefore I think 2% is really outrageous. I didn't support the way it was done, though, because the non-union people were singled out in the motions that kept coming up. And as someone who's non-union and who, at least in my municipality, has not had a raise for years because I'm non-union, I didn't feel it was fair to single out the non-union people unless they were going to go across the board and go, we don't want anyone getting raises in excess of 1%, and that includes the union.
Rick?
We gave raises to 3 people that we don't even hired yet.
It's true.
I brought that we have an acting police chief, so we don't have a police chief yet, who makes over $100,000. We gave him, I think it was a 2%, whatever that raise is. The assistant of public works, we don't have yet. We gave him a raise. And
The town planner?
the planning office, we gave him a raise too. So we
They
have
won't
3
get 'em
people,
until they're
3
hired.
people coming in, and they're over $100,000. And I was looking at it, and I'm not saying anybody's not worth it. It's just, what are you bringing to the table? You can't afford to live on grossing $8,000 a month with a $100,000 salary. I mean, that's what it breaks down to. We have people in town that aren't even going to make the $100,000 with two people working. So they're coming in. What are they bringing in? They haven't shown what they can do yet they're stopping. They're going to get top
Getting a
pay.
raise.
But besides other benefits, it's why can't we start lower down on the pay scale? What I got for the answer was, well, to draw those type of people, I watch 60 Minutes, I watch all these shows about all these well-educated people that are unemployed all over the country. I'm sure they'd love to come here to get a job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody from Harvard. I don't need somebody that came from here. If they come from Kentucky and want, give them 6 months to work out. Hey, have bonus steps in between. Why do we have to give raises? Why can't we do bonuses? Why can't, if a department saves so much percentage of their budget, we give them a bonus? The department had a bonus for saving money, not depleting your budget.
Yeah, it's a great point.
think they do
What are the
get bonuses.
incentives? Sure.
Exactly.
Incentivize cost savings, incentivize efficiency, incentivize, beating deadlines for some of these public work departments, because time is a killer in terms of, the longer it is, the more you're going to spend. So contract that, provide monetary bonuses or other type of additional vacation time, whatever it may be. I think that's a great point.
Bruce?
Well, when I was chairman of the Board of Education, we would have long negotiating sessions that went into the wee hours of the evening with an attorney. And we were pretty hard bargainers, and we did it as a board. I don't know if they do that today. Do they do that today? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Well, probably not. But in any case, there's a problem because up in Hartford, you've got the law which states they can go to a binding arbitration
Right.
situation, and they're going to get some more money anyway. The budget's increased for education 5% per year since 2001. But the thing that I'm really concerned about with payroll and that sort of thing is, I want to see a study that, and I've seen studies, but I want to see a study comparing our people and the pay rates with the private sector. Because anytime anybody leaves one of these government jobs, it's a golden opportunity. They don't want to go. People break down the doors to try to get into work for the government
That's true.
because it's such a good deal. The last number I saw was there was a disparate number between public and private employers of like 17%. It's probably more than that
Right.
now. But in any case, we need that done so that we can have, again, a plan or a roadmap. We don't have any plans and roadmaps to do these things with, so we can't hang things
Do you
on
think we can get an honest assessment?
Well, I think yes. There are certainly plenty of organizations that do exactly that, yeah. If you go to the
Because-
right people.
As long as they don't have to talk to anybody.
The thing is, though, it
Yeah,
seems that
exactly.
the management has a vested interest in the union salary, the union going up every year 2% because they get it too.
Who walks a tightrope, that's right, between the taxpayers and the people that work for them, sure. It's a tough order, but nonetheless, it's got to be done.
Right.
I mean, 2% is a heck of a lot more on 100,000
Absolutely.
than it is on the $43,000 employee.
That's right.
Same as when the Board of Ed comes through and it's only a mere 1%. Well, 1% of 75 million is a lot of money, the 1%. Yet when we did the police cut for 134,000, they're ready to lay off patrolmen and everything else in a $6.5 million budget. 134,000 is 0.02%. That's nothing.
Speaking of the police budget, that goes to the next question. It was brought to the town council and RTM's attention that the taxpayers are funding vacant positions in the police department, public works, as well as planning and development. It seems to have fallen on deaf ears. Now, what about that? How can we in the future, this year it seemed like we failed, but how can we in the future, if the police budget comes in like it did this year with 72 full-time employees, but there were only 70,
Right.
how do we
Well,
do that?
Bruce, I think you asked that question during our committee meeting, and the way it was explained to us, and I understand it, it's
Process.
it's almost like 8 months, and it's almost a year to actually put somebody on the road by themselves. So between the posting for the position, the final hiring for that position, then sending them to the academy, then going through the officer training program on the road, and then coming on the road as a year. So if you have people leaving back here, there's a constant, they're never catching up to the 72, even though there is, in essence, 72 on the way. They're just not a 72 sitting
But
there.
it seems like they're functioning with 70 unless I'm missing something.
Of course.
Well, you have overtime. I mean,
All right, so they're
course they are,
functioning
yeah.
with 70,
right, but you have overtime.
okay?
So if you're using overtime to fill some slot, I mean, you don't, there will always be overtime.
Of course.
I mean, I've been on both sides of the spectrum, the union side, and even though we try to sell that if you hire 5 more people, we can cut the overtime in half. It'll never
There'll still
come,
be
it'll never be in half. There will still be overtime because it's almost impossible to
So-
stop it.
If, under that scenario that you just laid out, why don't they just run it at 70 then? If they're constantly trying to keep it at 70 and they're falling behind because people at the back end are leaving and this one takes 8 months to get on board, why not
Because
just,
the way we explain, if you say, well, 70 is going to be our number, we're leaving this 2, then eventually when 2 leave, they're going to be operating at the 68 or 1 or the 60. They're never
Yeah.
going to get there until they're a totally young department to where people aren't leaving anymore and they don't have the retirements and things happen, and then eventually they will be there. But they're still down from, I don't know how many years ago it was, whatever their highest count was, 70.
Well, 20 years ago, they
Or
had 68 people there. We have more now, and we've got half the crime that we had. But
speaking of less with more, another area of concern is increasing the Board of Ed budget by millions of dollars. With student enrollment trending downward every year, there should be some areas to reduce the Board of Ed budget. However, again, on the floor of the RTM this session, there was no amended figure proposed. Why?
If I can weigh in, a lot of, the budget increase for Board of Education was driven by the need to put additional monies in for benefits. That was the majority of the uplift. And that was roughly $2 million. There were some modest cuts made in terms of headcount, maybe 2 people or so, and that was it. I think there's the belief with the new superintendent that, you know, we're going to give you the opportunity to do good things, to Bruce's point, improve the test scores, to coach the teachers, to do things that need to be done. So now he owns that budget, he owns the performance. I think our job then, this year, next year, in the years to come, is really hold people accountable to deliver performance that we expect. And so that would be my sense, that the overall budget for Board of Education is salary and benefits, 77% of the budget. And oh, by the way, our enrollment in the town school system has dropped 21%
that's right.
in the last 13 years.
That's right.
21%.
That's astonishing.
And so it kind of gets back to things
And
such
the
as
staff has stayed the same.
yeah, the staff stay the same. The money spent to address special student needs has increased dramatically. So, and that is a required service on a number of levels. But the thing about it is, how do you deliver quality education that is better than average? How do you provide policing, given the changes of demographics of Groton? More older people, the crime rate is declining, so on and so forth. How do you orchestrate, how do you design an organization to deliver those benefits? And it's not going to be by building new schools,
Thank you.
there's the whisper of new schools are
Please.
needed, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at any major study,
Right.
McKinsey and Company, large consulting firm, talked about what drives educational performance. Nowhere's on there is build a new school.
Thank you.
And the survey that was just printed in the day yesterday from Connecticut manufacturers indicated that the skills of the kids in Connecticut are woefully inadequate for the jobs that are presented to them. And of course, it's always in math and reading.
Of course.
So there we go. It's a statewide problem, but we have our little piece of it right here.
And I think Karen was sitting next to me during that because we were jostling numbers and we look at each other and say, why propose it? It's not passing. I mean, are you just trying to make it look good? Like it's just vote no when it comes through because it's going to pass. And I mean, I brought up the point of we went from doing K to 12 program to pre-K. We were never told how much the costs would be by starting to absorb that. And now they've extracted $2 million from the K through 12 program to run this thing. So that's $2 million that they found, or it got stripped from what programs or what educational needs that were needed for the K through 12 to start something that you're already dysfunctional in K through 12. So let's see if we can make the pre-K come in more dysfunctional, and it'll equally work out. Like you had said when we were talking about the schools, and my constituents would ask, and I'm not a politician, I'm Italian with no filter, so I say what's on my mind. And it's like, I ask my kids that are in school, does the roof leak? No. In the winter, was it warm? Yep. Were the lights on? Yep. Did you have a desk? Yep. That's all that's needed. There's third world countries teaching in tents. Mm-hmm. We need the teachers in the class. And I understand, and the special needs and everything, we're asking teachers to teach multiple levels of educational learners in one classroom. It's a failure. It's not going to work. Where years ago, when I was going through school, there was groups at learning levels.
That's right.
Yeah.
You all accomplished the end goal, but it was how you got there. And I think the teachers are getting frustrated because they're having to teach segments all the way through, and they can't see any continuity in anything either. I think, and that's what is ruining the whole school system. And then throw in Common Core, and I don't.
But I really wish you guys would have proposed another number.
It was not going to happen. It was not going to happen. There was an aura in the room that night that said, "Don't bother."
Yeah.
Well, I think at some point during the break, too, there was a discussion going on among a fairly large group of representatives that they did not want to hamstring the new superintendent by cutting the budget, that they felt that he was owed
$75 million.
he was owed the budget that he proposed because this would give him the opportunity to put all of the changes that he was proposing into place. And then, if it failed, or he wasn't able to meet the goals that he had told them that he was going to achieve, then they would be willing to consider not giving him another increase again
I mean,
next year.
during the cadre years, we were lied to because he kept saying how he found the money. It made it look like he was really good at budgeting and doing, and what he was doing was raiding the healthcare money. And in essence, the way I looked at it as, we were putting the money back because it was now zero. Is all those years of zero, he was taking it from there. Yes, he's getting grants. Yes, he was getting other monies coming in. But the overall budget, I mean, you say 75 million, the taxpayers are only really paying 42. The rest is all,
Everybody else.
is all federal and
Right.
state monies coming, even though it is a tax, it comes from everybody. I'm not saying that, but the
Not from
actual
our property
taxpayers
tax.
are 42, I think 42,000 or 43,000 of the actual monies. So it was proposing that, but we do have positions that can still be, he can cut further. He made some changes. We have a bus coordinator. Why? We're the only, I want to say the state, but I'm not calling every town in the state to find out that has a bus coordinator.
I've had a lot of issues with that position over the years because of the fact that the salary's doubled.
Right, the salary's going up, and the
Yeah.
bus company does it itself.
Yeah.
It knows where it's sending buses, and the complaints I had from constituents was the rudeness and stuff. It's like, I go to the schools, I see the buses come in half full, 14 people on it. You're not doing your job because you should be seeing how you can reduce the cost of buses.
Right.
So you're not coordinating, what are you doing? And again, like, nobody's accountable.
That's right.
Who is accountable for these things? It's not, we don't think outside the box. We don't use our Yankee ingenuity anymore. If there's a project to be done, we don't rally volunteers or groups, to do it.
We hire a
We just
consultant.
hire it. We got to engineer it. We got to hire a
Hire a
consultant to
consultant.
it, and then we got to spend money on a contractor. And that's the way we seem to do everything.
Well, maybe next year, Dr. Grainer will have to answer, and hopefully it'll be all good,
Well, I hope so.
you know.
He talked a good game, I must say. So we'll see if he can deliver.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. I want to thank you all for coming. This has been really nice, and I appreciate you and thank you for your service to the town. And thank you for tuning into the Gate Show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roseanne.
Thank you.